You know what bothers me most about the Jason Aldean situation? It's the insincerity of his response and the blatant ignorance that accompanied it. So, if you don't know, Jason Aldean is a country singer who put out a music video called Try That in a Small Town. It's basically an anti-protester, pro-cop anthem. It starts out innocently enough, castigating anyone who thinks they can get away with robbing and carjacking people in a small town. Fine, don't do bad things in my neighborhood because we look out for our own. Great. But by the second stanza, he's moved on to scolding people who disrespect cops and burn flags. So we've shifted from describing behavior that's blatantly harmful to other human beings to behavior that's merely associated with people who don't share his political viewpoints. From here on, the whole timbre of the song shifts to a brazenly nationalistic, chest-thumping repudiation of people who would vaguely be described as woke, I'm sure. After that, he starts to make outright threats. See how far you make it down the road. Then he starts making false claims that they are coming for his guns. He goes on to describe the good old boys who are poised and ready for a fight. The songwriters are Kelly Lovelace, Nell Thrasher, Tully Kennedy, and Kurt Michael Allison, by the way. Some of Nashville's finest, I'm sure. The video, which was released on Friday, is even more egregious than the song itself. CMT had to pull it because there were so many complaints. It contains non-stop news footage of protesters being depicted as merely violent, antisocial agitators, making lewd gestures at cops and throwing Molotov cocktails at buildings, a reinforcement of right-wing messaging. And the whole thing is overlaid, of course, with giant, wholesome wheat fields where the good guys hang out, and the American flag is perpetually blowing in the wind. At one point, the video depicts protesters being assaulted by police in riot gear, and one scene even shows protesters being mowed down by a police car. It's a veritable right-wing wet dream. And then you have Aldean and his band trying their best to look like superheroes outside the Maury County Courthouse. The problem is that this courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee has a history of some horrible racial violence dating all the way back to 1927. A white woman accused an 18-year-old black man named Henry Choate of attacking her. He was immediately arrested and placed in the county jail. A white mob then descended on the jail and attacked him. He was bashed in the head repeatedly with a hammer and killed. After that, the white mob tied him to a truck and dragged him to the Maury County Courthouse in Aldean's video and hung his body there for the whole town to witness. Then in 1946, a black Navy vet got into an altercation with a white shopkeeper. A white mob gathered at the Maury County Courthouse in Aldean's video to threaten the black community. A group of black citizens then gathered in the black business district known as Mink Slide to provide self-defense. Columbia officers then decided to descend on the Mink Slide neighborhood. The crowd warned them to back off, but when they didn't, 4 police officers were shot and wounded. As retaliation, the Tennessee State Highway Patrol, along with a mob of white citizens, descended on the Mink Slide district and completely vandalized it. They randomly fired into buildings, stole cash and belongings, raided homes, and took all of the guns that they could find from black homes and businesses, about 300 in total. They arrested over 100 black people and refused to allow them bail or legal counsel. Police later shot and killed 2 black detainees in the jail and injured a third after claiming that they tried to steal their guns. Now, did Jason Aldean or his band or any of the production crew know about the horrible racial history that this courthouse represented? I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think it's highly unlikely that they did. But that's the issue. They didn't know because they were so myopically focused on their own worldview that any outside perspective wouldn't have had the chance of getting through. Let's not forget that the Klan was started in one of these quaint Tennessee small towns. It's pretty obvious from Aldean's history on race that he isn't exactly hanging out with people that will introduce him to inconvenient truths about these small towns that he loves celebrating. I mean, this is a dude that was wearing blackface as recently as 2015. He's worn clothing containing Confederate flag imagery and has even sold Confederate flag clothing as a part of his official tour merchandise. Aldean, who's a survivor of the horrific 2019 Las Vegas shooting, seemed shocked, I tell you, shocked, that the video might have come across as pro-lynching. He claims that there were no racial overtones whatsoever, and then he spun the whole thing this way. Try That in a Small Town for me refers to the feeling of a community that I had growing up where we took care of our neighbors regardless of differences of background or belief. I'm sorry, I must have missed that messaging. I was too busy listening to you make very thinly veiled threats of violence towards anyone who protested police brutality or burned a flag as a political statement. There is such a disconnect between the message that Jason Aldean is putting out there and how he wants to be perceived. And this is the history of soft bigotry and racism in this country. Oh, we're not anti-black. Nothing in that song or video specifically targeted black people, but it didn't have to. He could say and show just enough to get him right up to the line without crossing it, maybe even in his own mind. But looming right there behind him is a not-so-subtle reminder that America's messed up history with race is always present and is unconsciously providing all of the subtext necessary to expose the soft bigotry and racial violence that it refuses to confront.